Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about creating intentional, non-monogamous living communities. And I'm going to be talking about this and sharing some of my thoughts, but I'd really like to hear from you. I've got some projects in the works, some things going on that I'd really like to get your feedback and hear from you on this subject matter so that it might impact how things get moved forward. And so anyway, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Non-Monogamous Mark, and I am the co-founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization called Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. And Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association is challenging the social norms of monogamy because in reality our society and our culture in the United States is not a monogamous culture. If you account for the people who are living ethically and consensually non-monogamous lives, and also the people who are living non-ethically and non-consensually non-monogamous lives, those are the cheaters. If you take a look at all those people, the majority of the couples in America are involved in not monogamy. And so I guess we call that non-monogamy. It's either consensual and ethical or it's non-consensual and non-ethical, but it's not monogamy for the majority. And so we challenge the social norms of monogamy, and we provide tools and support to help people to liberate their relationships and their sexuality and create new norms for their own personal culture and community. But enough about non-monogamous lifestyle, and at the end, I'm going to tell you how you can find out more about non-monogamous lifestyles. But for now, let's get back to the subject of creating non-monogamous intentional living communities. You see, because I've been involved in leading discussion groups and hosting events and things in my home and other public spaces for 10 years now for the non-monogamous community. And one of the comments and the subject matters that keeps coming up, and I've had lots of discussion with people over the years on, is that of creating intentional housing and intentional community spaces where non-monogamous people come together and they live in a co-housing situation. All kinds of thoughts go through my mind on this. One is to start to create a network of real estate agents. A network of real estate agents so that when you are going to be out looking to buy a house, then we can tap you into our network of non-monogamous real estate agents so that you end up finding a house that we start to increase the density of non-monogamous people within a community so that they're sharing in neighborhoods together, things of that nature. So when you go to buy a house, then we'd connect you up with a real estate agent, and that real estate agent then would help to direct you into particular neighborhoods where you'd be able to have the kind of house that you're looking for within the budget that you're looking for, but also then we try to concentrate in these areas the non-monogamous community aspects, and so that more non-monogamous people are in a one particular community than another community of where people live. And so that's one of the thoughts that we have that we're kind of want some feedback from you and so find out from you. What do you think of that idea? And should we create a network of non-monogamous real estate agents so that non-monogamous people have this network to work with and can then live in communities where there's a higher concentration of non-monogamous people? So that's one idea. Another thought here along this lines is creating communities that are people who are living within a household and helping households, people who own maybe a house. Like I own a house in Seattle, and that for years now I've been renting it out. And it's a small 2-bedroom house and 1 bath, and I'm really kind of thinking about remodeling that house in order to maximize its the footprint on the property there in the Seattle marketplace. But then in not only remodeling, but adding on to it. In fact, I'm really kind of giving some thought to putting about 2,600 square feet addition onto it. Right now it's 850 square feet. We'd be cutting off maybe about 175 of those square feet. And so we'd end up with a house that is probably like about 8 bedrooms and some office space and some community space and all kinds of different thoughts and ideas I have on this. But one of the things that we're thinking about doing is to really help people who own property, maybe like own houses, to be able to take and maximize by either creating an addition or also by taking and just opening up the space they have and making it available to other people in the non-monogamous community. In my case, in adding on the addition, then I'm going to go to the city and find out what is the maximum that we could do in having um, like related and unrelated people live in one space. And I think that for the zoning in my area, in fact, that where this house is, I think that I can have 8 unrelated people, if I remember right, living. And so that's like, well, if there were married couples that we wanted to have there, then that could be like 16 non-monogamous married couples within a household. And or another possibility we're looking at is creating some Airbnb opportunities, and that particular property is close to the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, and so having not only maybe have maybe 5 or 6 of the bedrooms available where there are couples that live in those rooms permanently year round, but then maybe have 2 or 3 rooms available on an Airbnb situation where then people who are non-monogamous wanting to travel in and be part of a community then as they travel. And so as we build this whole concept and this idea out, and this is why, again, I'm wanting to hear from you on this. What do you think of the idea of you being able to travel and be able to stay within a non-monogamous community in a house where there's an Airbnb going on and it's a non-monogamous household? Yes, there would be non-monogamous households that would be adults-only households, and there would be non-monogamous households also that would be more family-oriented for those who have children. But helping people to, one, first of all, that own property, to be able to think about adding additions on and maximize the value of that property and the footprint on the property and the space so that they can take and create more of a non-monogamous community with the property that they already have. And then 2, the second part of this is, of course, having people that either, one, that live in that housing area, that house, and so live within a community, or 2, or both, that also people who travel and can have an Airbnb type of a situation where we create a network then of landlords that have Airbnbs opportunities for non-monogamous community people, and also of landlords who have live-in opportunities. Like here in Ventura, California, where I spend half my time with my partner Kathy, then I live in a household. It's actually a condominium. It's a 3-bedroom condominium, and Kathy and I rent one of the bedrooms in this household. And one of the gentlemen in the household, the owner of the property, is a non-monogamous individual, but then the other individual that rents a room just rents a room. But like in the case of here, it is a clothing optional household. And so one of the things that, Kathy and I do is we run around the household naked. And yes, our roommates, they see us naked then. And so like in my house in Seattle, that I'm thinking about doing this addition and creating a non-monogamous community with it, then it's something that also I'd make, for my property, and this is where different property owners could have different environments that they create. If they have a family environment, that creates a different environment maybe than an adult environment. But for my environment, I'd like to create a clothing optional environment where then people who want to live there, they'd be non-monogamous, they'd be clothing optional, and they'd be sexually liberated, so that we live in a household where you can enjoy expressing your sexuality within the household. There's a community in New York where people or somebody went in and they bought out just an old, kind of like a rundown industrialized warehouse type space, and they ended up creating a non-monogamous community, a living community in that space. And it's tremendous the things that they've done there. But one of the things I've read articles on is that the tenants there just absolutely love, and that is the fact that, yeah, it's a great thing to hear other people be having sex in their room, and then when they come out of the room, like, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. And so it's just something that it's kind of expected. Yes, you have quiet hours, or you don't want to be creating a lot of noise. It's going to wake up the other members of your household or anything like that. But to create a household, a community where it's sexually liberated and it's non-monogamous, and people can within the household can enjoy having sex amongst the other members of the household, or people can invite guests over and have sex, and not feel like it's an issue or a problem, like we're in the property that I want to add on to and develop, and create an outdoor space even where, yeah, people could have sex outdoors, out in the kind of the private, secluded backyard. And so there's lots of different possibilities here. And again, I'm wanting to get your ideas on this, because over the years I've talked to a lot of people about this and gotten a lot of good ideas. But one of the ideas, in fact, one person a number of years ago mentioned to me, is that, buying an old motel and then remodeling it, fixing it up, and making it a non-monogamous community. Another idea that Kathy, my partner here in Ventura, talked to me about today. She's just we're just having a conversation about building non-monogamous community and housing situations. And then it just kind of started to flow, because one of the things is that we want to create also a minimalist housing situation. And minimalism is not about being poor and living a poor lifestyle. Minimalism is just simply not allowing your stuff and things to accumulate and acquire, beyond that, the stuff that actually serves your life. When you think about it, when people get to where they have to go into an assisted living facility, really how much stuff that they have accumulated their whole life do they end up taking into an assisted living facility with them that serves them at that point in their life? And I found myself a number of years ago, I'm not assisted living in a facility by any means, but I just started thinking about all this a number of years ago. This probably goes back about 5 years ago now, and as far as the amount of space that I occupy, I mean, in my house in Seattle, it's a 2,600 square foot home. And the amount of space that I actually utilize, I've got a desk area where I've got an office where I sit and do my work. I then have a living room where I've got a couch, and I've got a TV that I don't watch TV on. I like to watch movies. Fact is, I don't even have it hooked up to watch TV on it, but I watch movies on it. And so I occupy that space. I have a dining room where I don't like to sit in the living room and eat food. That's how I grew up, and never ate a meal at a table. Always taking it in the living room and eating in front of the TV, and that's not how I live today. And so I like to sit down at a dining room table. So then you've got a kitchen area, and you've got, of course, laundry, and then a bathroom. I shower and bathroom situation. But thinking of a kind of like creating a home which is an intentional living community for non-monogamous people. Well, one of the things I think about is to really focus on minimalist people that really don't necessarily want to acquire a bunch of stuff, and have learned that that's not what makes them happy. And so they don't need to have a large space for themselves, and they yes, need some community space. That's shared space, but they don't need for themselves to have a large space, for like a large room for themselves. I think, yes, everybody needs to have their own space, their own room, but it doesn't need to be a large space, because we don't really occupy that much of that space. And so, I'm thinking to create more of a minimalist household. One of the things I've thought about as well is being able to take and have a room, again, being a clothing optional, sexually liberated situation where, how about just a big, like, open dorm room where there's multiple king-size beds in there, and where people still have their own rooms where they can go and have their own private time if they want their own private time. But then for a larger space, then have a room where it's just a big open room and a lot of king-size beds in there. And another possible thought that I have going on here is where you'd have maybe bunk beds in a room that would be queen-size bunk beds, so that maybe there'd be 8 or 10 people that would end up sleeping in that room, where they all slept in close confines together, or they like to have their own individual sleeping quarters. These are things that I'd like to have your input on. What would you find that you enjoy the idea of, the thought of, a room where that many people can all sleep in the same room together, and so do you want to have your own bed always, or do you want to sleep in a bed where it's like a puppy pile situation? And so some of the ideas that I've kind of thought about, Kathy, when I talked about earlier today, is the idea that as people, when they get older and they go into assisted living facilities, they're very minimal facilities. The rooms that they actually have themselves are minimal. And we kind of like that idea where, you have a kitchen and a showering room, and you have a clothing optional community. You can have like a large shower, community shower type situation, and a large bathroom, and people can come and go, and it's like no big deal. Maybe, you have a larger household like the addition I'm putting on the space that I have, that, yeah, there'd be a couple different bathrooms, but again, there'd probably be like one large shower area. And so the idea is you want to encourage a sharing community amongst the non-monogamous, sexually liberated people that live within the space. And so, like an assisted living facility, there's these assisted living facilities that go out of business, or they go up for sale because the owners go out and build a new facility somewhere else. And, but some of those assisted living ideas might really be able to be remodeled and create a wonderful intentional space for non-monogamous, sexually liberated community space. What do you think of that? And so then one of the things too is like in creating a sharing community. I like wearing clothes, once in a while. Like today, I wore clothes all day long. I'm a nudist, but at the same time, sometimes just for warmth, I wear clothes inside. But everybody ends up having to go outside as well. And so when we go outside of our space, our property, we need to put on clothes, obviously. Well, instead of me having a closet full of shirts and pants and sweaters and all the things that I need to wear, well, how about having a closet that's big enough for like 2 or 3 or 4 items, and then having a shared closet with the whole household? And that whole household then might be where the shared closet is split up by sizes. Even like if you walked into a clothing store and you saw a big clothing rack, that they'd have, okay, here's the size, small, here's the size large, here's the size medium, here's the size, 6, 8, 12, 32, or however things are sized. But you'd have things then that are organized and put away by size, so that the whole community of people are able to then just go to this closet, pull out the items that they want for the next couple, 2 or 3 days, and yeah, they're shared amongst everybody. If there are like 3 guys in the same household that wear pretty much the same size clothes, why not share those clothes instead of having us to be so possessive and say, "Oh, those are mine," And like I've got suit jackets that I don't wear very often anymore, but so maybe have that in the closet, so when somebody else needs the suit jacket, then it's there for them. And so I really like the idea of having a sharing community amongst the intentional communities that we create, and like to have your input on that as well. In sharing a community, it'd be also maybe sharing cars and vehicles. Instead of everybody having to have their own car, you realize how much of the time the cars that we spend a lot of our money on end up being parked and just sitting in a parking lot. When you go to work, if you drive that car to work, it sits in the parking lot all day. When you go home, all the time you spend at home, it sits in your driveway or your garage or on the street in front of your house. Our cars, we spend a lot of money on them, and they spend a lot of time sitting and parked. And so situations where maybe, again, a community that would be come together and they figure out how many vehicles are needed, and then they would share the use of those vehicles. So that's part of the sharing community that I'm wanting to create. Another concept, like before Kathy and I moved here to Ventura, then we lived in an apartment complex where the buildings are 4 stories tall, and each apartment, then each floor, 4 floors, each floor had, I think, 12 units on each floor, and 3 stairwells divided up between the building. And so the 12, there's more than 12, I think, because there's, see, it must have been about 24, excuse me, about 24 units in each building, four floors, and then three stairwells. But then there was like, I don't know how many of these buildings on this piece of land. There was I don't know, 15 of these buildings, but in all, I figured there was about between 400 and 600 people living in this apartment complex. And I thought, what a great way to create a non-monogamous, clothing optional, sexually liberated community where you can have buildings, different buildings, so that, yeah, people with different personalities and interests and what have you could maybe live in different buildings. But then, like, for instance, you'd have a pool facility and a hot tub facility, and that'd all be, clothing optional again. And so that, but we could create these communities. And so these are some ideas on some things that I'm working on and pulling some things together for the future, and I'd really like to have your input on them and to know what you think. Would you be interested in living in a non-monogamous community? One of the things when Kathy and I moved here to Ventura, we've not lived in a shared housing situation ever before. And so yes, we find that it's one of the things that you have to make some adjustments, and it becomes a skill that we've oftentimes lost because as Americans, it's become part of our culture that we go and we live isolated lives. We all move into our own places instead of living with the expanded community or expanded family situation like so many other cultures around the world do, and like our own culture many years back did. And actually we're starting to get back to that now because of the economy and people's desires, where even families are starting to live as multiple generations within the same household. And so we'd like to really allow people in the non-monogamous community to create intentional living communities. And we'd like to, again, have all your input on this that you can share with us. And one of the things with the community ideas that we want, like I said, is that they be minimalist communities, but at the same time, is so that it would actually increase your standard of living. Just imagine that, if you currently own a car, and are paying, a lot of money every month for either your rent or your housing expenses, and then the maintenance and everything of the property, And so imagine then if whether we have houses that are maybe all in the same block where non-monogamous people live, well, the things that we can do is save money for food. I eat organic food exclusively, and so organic food is a lot more expensive than non-organic food. I mean, I bought some walnuts today, and the organic walnuts were $12.95 a pound. The non-organic walnuts were $4.50 a pound. But the reality is that organic farms are usually smaller farms. They're not the huge factory farms. Also, the huge factory farms are subsidized by our government and our tax dollars, whereas the organic farms are not at all subsidized. And so these organic farmers, they, have to charge more for their product. And I'm willing to support those organic farmers because, again, most of them are small family farms instead of the factory farms. And also just, the standpoint from having healthier food. I want to be healthier from the food I eat and not have all the chemicals from non-organic farms and things like that. And so anyway, within a community, in creating these intentional communities, we can do a lot in saving money on our food expense. I just went over the budget today, in fact, and for two people, we're spending about $350 a month for food. And so for $350 a month, if we got more food in bulk, just think of the savings that we could probably get, 25, 35%, I would imagine, of savings. And so that's part of the thing in the community is to create a sharing community so that we are increasing our abundance in our lifestyle so that we have less of our money that's needing to go out for the things that maintain our life, housing, food, transportation. Those are the big three items. And so that we can have more of our money available for things that we truly add to our lives, like maybe travel or experiences of going out and having experiences like going out to the movie or going out to the opera, if you're an opera fan, or the playhouse, or theater, live theater, or just creating more relationships or going out for coffee more often. And then another possibility for these intentional communities is that I've thought about in a larger community is to be able to have a dining facility so that all the cooking then is taken care of and done. Again, buying things in larger quantities, these things can be done very affordably. And so these are things that I think if we start really thinking about building more intentional, non-monogamous communities, that we can accomplish a lot for increasing our abundance of how we all live in the lifestyle. For instance, a motorhome. Instead of one family having to pay for and own a motorhome or even a boat or a camper or a trailer, maybe have 5 families. Something I want to do through Non-Monogamous Lifestyle Association is create something where co-ops could be formed so that 5 families or 2 families or 4 families, whatever number that works for that particular situation, can co-op together and go into then having an item like, say, a motorhome. But also coming up with some ideas where those co-ops are also have some fluidity in it, so that just like in a living situation where in a particular city like Seattle or Ventura, where then if you really were living in a non-monogamous household and or non-monogamous community building, or whatever, any of these ideas that I've talked about, where then there's the ability to move to another building. Maybe you get into a relationship where you decide that, hey, I want to be over in that part of town. So there's the ability to move into other buildings. And same thing with owning motorhomes, where there's like a pool of people. And so that if you aren't going to, be necessarily using the motorhome for a couple of years, then you don't have to keep paying into it and stuff. And so there's lots of different ideas in creating co-ops, and co-ops that offer fluidity, whether it be a housing co-op situation or a motorhome or co-oping vacations even, all kinds of things, so that we can help to increase the standard of living and the abundance that non-monogamous people have to enjoy. So if you like any of those ideas, please either send me a message or comment in the comments section. If you want to send me a message, how do you do that? Is you can go ahead and click on the link in the description and get on our email list. When you get on our email list, you get all my contact details, my email address, all that kind of stuff. You will be sent to you, and so you can have contact directly with me. And so if that's of help to you, please take advantage of that. And of course, when you get on our email list, you'll keep finding out more information about Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association and things that we have going on, and even things like this. You'll be able to stay informed on things like this. So go ahead and get on that email list, click on that link, and thanks a lot for listening today.